Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm back with what I hope is an exciting video because today we're going to be talking about vocabulary. And vocabulary is undoubtedly one of the most important aspects of learning a language because, well, for obvious reasons, without vocabulary you cannot build coherent sentences and you cannot communicate with others. And I feel like a lot of people don't know how to learn vocabulary. They don't know where to start with learning vocabulary or even which vocabulary to learn. And that's exactly what I want to be talking about in this video, how to effectively learn the right vocabulary. This video will be divided into kind of two different sections. In the first part of the video, I'll be talking about which vocabulary you should be learning, and in the second part of the video, I'll be giving tips and advice on how to actually learn vocabulary. I feel like learning vocabulary can sometimes be quite a stressful journey because I feel like a lot of people they set themselves unrealistic goals of I want to learn X amount of words in one day, I'm going to write them down, I'm going to memorize them, I'm going to go through them all the time and learn them that way. And I feel like that doesn't help. I feel like the best way to learn vocabulary is by not trying to memorize it, and we'll see what I mean with that later in the video. For now, let's get started with the first part of the video. So, what vocabulary should you actually be learning? Now this really depends on you yourself and your personal goals, what level you plan to achieve and what you plan to do with the language. But as a general rule, I would say focus on learning vocabulary which is beneficial to you. We generally tend to remember words better when they're related to what we're interested in. So for example, learning words about our hobbies or our interests or things which are actually going to be useful to us. For example, me, when I'm studying a language, because I'm mainly interested in stuff about nature and travel, when I'm learning these type of words in terms of transportation or learning about nature vocabulary in my target language, these words I end up remembering a lot better than words about politics, because I don't have that huge interest in politics like I do with travel and outdoor activities, so I tend to learn these words a lot easier. Because when you're learning a language, your brain generally tends to keep the words which are actually more beneficial to you and the words which you're going to learn. So if you're learning words about, for example, politics and you have no interest in politics and then you're forgetting all these words, don't think that that's not normal, because that's completely normal. And that's just your brain thinking, okay, it's going to discard that from your mind because you're never going to need to use it and it's going to be completely useless to you. So instead of learning words randomly and without any real goal of what you're planning to learn, try learning words which are going to be beneficial to you and words which you're actually going to use and words which link with your interests, because your brain is going to remember those words much easier. Also try considering why you're learning that language. Are you learning a language for work purposes because you're going to travel to a country where that language is spoken, or is it just out of personal interest? Having answers to these questions can help you go in the right direction with what vocabulary you're going to study. For example, if you're studying a language just for personal interest, then it's completely up to you how much you learn and what level you reach in the language. If you're learning the language just for travel, then it's most likely that you're not going to need to learn really advanced vocabulary. You should focus on studying words which will help you get around, order food in a restaurant, ask for directions, introduce yourself, etc., etc. If you're learning a language for work purposes, that's probably one of the only reasons why you would ever need to reach a high C1, C2 level in a language, which will mean that you're fully proficient, you can talk like a native speaker, and you can understand absolutely everything. If you're not learning a language for work purposes, then I'd recommend not really bothering until you actually get really, really good at the basics. Don't bother stressing yourself to learn a language to a full native speaker standard, because that's a really long journey and that can get quite stressful, especially if you're just planning to learn the language for basic usage. So that was the first part of the video done already. That actually went really, really quick. So now we're getting into the interesting part of the video and probably the most useful part: how to actually learn vocabulary. Everyone has their own preferred way of learning a language. So I'm going to provide you with a few tips to learn a language, and I cannot guarantee that all of them are going to work for you, because yeah, everyone learns a language in their own way. And some methods may work for some people, while other methods may not work for others. So it's basically like a trial and error journey, and it may work for you, it may not work for you. Just try out different methods and see which one works best for you. The first tip I can recommend to everyone, literally everyone, because this method is going to be something which benefits literally everyone who learns a language, is to learn words in context. So this means instead of learning a word just completely on its own, an isolated word, try learning it in context with an example sentence. Let's take the word fun, for example. Fun can have several different meanings, and it can be used as a noun or an adjective, or even as a verb sometimes. So because you're going to learn the word fun, but if you're learning it on its own, then you're not going to know how to use it in a sentence, and this can sometimes make you say something which doesn't make sense or it sounds really weird. So if you actually look at an example sentence which includes the word fun, then you're going to know how to use it, because fun is actually a word which is generally used after expressing a quantity. So for example, I had a lot of fun at the party last night. That's one of the example sentences in which fun is used. Most of the time, dictionaries will give you example sentences. So if you're learning a word, try looking at it in the dictionary, or online, just simply search define specific word, and you're going to find the definition. Generally, if it's a word which can be used in various different contexts, then it's going to have an example sentence so that you can actually know how to use the word in context. Or you can use reverso context. And I love this app, website, it is both. Reverso context is basically a resource and a tool which can provide you with loads and loads and loads of example sentences for basically any word you put in. And so, for example, if you put in the word fun on reverso context, it will come up with all these example sentences where the word fun is used. And on top of that, it can provide translations into many different languages. So you can translate English to Spanish, Spanish to English, Spanish to German, etc. And it's really, really useful to learn different words in context, hence the name, reverso context. I also recommend learning synonyms and antonyms of words when you get to a higher level in a language. So still using the word fun as an example, we could find different synonyms and antonyms related to the word fun, and you can do this by actually using a spider diagram or a mind map, and these help you to basically learn words. So you can write, for example, in the center of a page, in a bubble, write the word fun or any other word which you're learning, and write down as many synonyms or antonyms which you can think of related to the word which you are focusing on. However, it's always a good idea, again, to check and learn the word in context, because fun has many, many synonyms and many antonyms, but there are some words which just don't work. So take the example sentence we used earlier, I had a lot of fun at the party last night. There's a few synonyms which you can find for fun which don't make sense in this context. For example, a synonym of fun could be jollification, but if you're saying I had a lot of jollification at the party last night, people are just going to look at you really weirdly because no one says that. I mentioned this a few minutes ago, and I'm going to mention it again, that methods vary from person to person, and some methods and some resources may work for some while they may not work for others. And so I'm going to recommend to you that you experiment with different methods and different resources to learn. So for example, we mentioned the mind map, and the mind map for me is a good way to learn different vocabulary. However, it might not work for everyone. So there are a few different methods which I could recommend. If you want, I would recommend messing around with these different methods and seeing which ones work best for you and which ones don't. Just remember that not all of them are going to be as useful to you as they may be for some other people. For example, you can use flashcards to learn vocabulary. And flashcards are really, really common in language learning, and a lot of people use them. You can write on one side of the card the word which you plan to learn, so the given word. And then on the other side, you can either write the translation into your native language, or you can write the definition of the word with an example sentence underneath it, if your level in that language is high enough to be able to study words in the language you are learning. You can also mess around with different language learning apps. I know that Memrise is my favourite language learning app to learn vocabulary because it literally just gives you a whole list of vocabulary. Rarely does it actually explain the word in context, so if you're studying a language with Memrise, I could recommend if there's no context with the word, then while you're learning that word on Memrise, then go on to a different resource such as a dictionary online or by hand and look at the definition of the word and look at the words in example sentences, because yeah, like I said, you don't want that confusion of having jollification at a party with your friends. And you can also try out different word association games, such as you can do this with your friends by text if your friends are willing to help you out with this, where you name a word and then you try and find other words which are associated with that word. And this is a fun way to, it may seem a bit childish, but it's going to help you to learn a language. It's a fun way to put your brain into practice. Or you can use online apps and games, for example, Word or Scrabble, as these words are really going to test your vocabulary expansion knowledge and see how many words you actually know. Or you can try out post-it notes. Post-it notes, I mean, it's just a simple way for naturally getting used to the words. So you can write down the word on a post-it note and then stick it to the given object. So for example, write down the word, like, I don't know, refrigerator, and then stick it actually to your refrigerator. And then every time you go to the fridge to get food at night, or basically whenever you go to the fridge, you're going to see that post-it note saying refrigerator, and eventually your brain's just going to naturally get used to that, so that when you hear the word spoken or when you see it, or you're also going to just naturally be able to use it and you won't realize that you're learning it, but then eventually it's just going to stick. I find natural acquisition one of the best ways to learn a language. Talk to natives, watch films, listen to music, read books. These are the best ways to get used to the way a language is spoken, written, and the grammar and the vocabulary and everything. With natural acquisition, you're just naturally learning the language, and you may not realize that you're learning it, but then you are really learning a lot. And it's probably one of the quickest and most effective ways to learn a language, especially if you don't have much time to learn it, because you can learn it listening to music while you're out on public transportation, or when you're talking to your friends or talking to native speakers. Then you can basically, even if you don't have time because you're busy working, there's always a way to integrate language learning into your daily life. And natural acquisition is the best for that, and it's going to really help you to learn other words and more vocabulary. But what I mentioned at the start of this video is try not to memorize words. What did I actually mean by that? Well, I mean that don't try to stress yourself to memorize loads of different words, and this is the importance of natural acquisition. You're learning a language in a natural way, which is not going to be stressful to you, and it's going to just be relaxing for your brain, and it's going to give your brain a break from all that hard work which it's been doing to learn a language. And if you're using flashcards, instead of trying to spend so much time a day studying these flashcards and trying to memorize the words, try spaced repetition. So instead of going back through these flashcards 20 times a day or whatever, maybe write them down and then leave it a day and then revise them, and keep doing that every 24 hours or so. Start revising these flashcards, and then once you get more used to the words and once you start memorizing them more, then you can start revising them every 3 to 4 days. And this is going to be good spaced repetition to test your actual memory, because if you're stressing yourself to learn loads and loads and loads of words in one go, you're not going to get anywhere. Because the important thing with language learning is enjoying the process and taking your time instead of rushing, because rushing with everything, when you rush, you don't get anything done. You end up going way too ahead of yourself and past your limits that you're not able to do it. So that's the important part of spaced repetition and natural acquisition in language learning, because without it you're just going to stress yourself out, and that's not going to help. But I believe that concludes this video. I've given you a bit of advice to help you with your language learning journey and learning vocabulary. Try out these different methods which I suggested to you and see which ones work well for you, because yeah, that's the whole part of language learning. It's trial and error. Some things may work for you, other things may not. And the important thing is that you're enjoying the journey and that you stay motivated and don't give up. If you find this video helpful, then I would appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channels to not miss any more language learning tips and advice from me, and share it with your friends if you think it could be beneficial for them in their language learning journey as well. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.